Welcome to Venture with Joe and Cody, where we take a deep dive into the minds of leaders and innovators making a real impact today. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody. And we're here to bring you the raw stories, the successes, and the setbacks that these trailblazers have experienced in their journey to where they are today.
Every week, we sit down with a new guest who's ready to share their insight and advice on business, entrepreneurship, and making a difference in their community. From local community members to industry experts, you're going to get the unfiltered truth behind their success.
So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the business world, join us for a journey of learning and inspiration.
So let's grab a drink, settle in, and let's get started. This is Venture with Joe and Cody. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Venture with Joe and Cody. My name is Joe Skipper. I'm the owner of Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp Realty in Oregon. I'm with my buddy Cody Wilhelm with Residential Mortgage. How are you, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Good. You're sick. We already talked about it, so we're not going to get into it. You're getting over it.
Yep. I may or may not be dead, but I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out.
Well, I don't want to waste any time because we have a super special guest on today, Gina Zejdlick, friend of mine, also former coworker, and has a really cool story of where she has started to where she is now. And so we're going to get started right away. Gina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Summer been going well for you?
Yes, it's been good. A lot of kids at home though.
Nice. Yeah, I know. It's like I want summer to last, but I also want the kids gone. So it's
right.
It's like that balance.
Get into a good
I want a
routine
summer without
here.
kids. Can I have a summer without kids? Is that that would be cool. Well, Gina, let's just start from when I knew you, and when I knew you, you were the governor's chief of staff, correct?
Yes.
Governors for the state of Oregon. I'm wondering, I know your history, so I didn't know when we actually came into
know each other. Why don't you do it,
and
Joe?
we can actually, we can maybe get into this of how you ignored me for I think 2.5 years before you actually acknowledged my presence in the governor's office, but we can get into that another time. But anyways, just wanted to start.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Time to learn your name.
Yeah, let's just get started. So a little history. I was with the governors, as most people listening, or my mom and dad are listening. I was with the governor's security detail for 5 years. The Oregon Governor Kate Brown. Gina was the governor's chief of staff during that time. So she's a pretty big deal, knows a lot of stuff, and had a lot of state secrets that we're going to try to dive into today. The more important thing, though, was that I was, we are with the governor, from at the office with her all the time, right beside her office, walk her to Gina's office. We are very intimately all involved. Gina is the same. Well, Gina had no idea who I was. For the first 1.5 years, I think I was in the governor's security detail, had no idea who I was. Thought I was just someone loitering around the office, for 1.5 years.
This bum?
Before she finally realized that I actually work for the governor and I do a job for the governor. So is that pretty much the story, Gina?
Yes, that sounds about right.
There's no other way she can explain it.
Right?
No, I mean, I knew Spike, but I didn't know you.
Just another jab, just another hurtful jab. Spike was another member of our team.
Well, maybe before you got to the governor's office, probably the most interesting, I got to the governor's office in the most interesting way possible, which was that I was working for then Secretary of State, Kate Brown. And that is when Kitzhaber got elected for the third. He had done 2 terms a while ago, and then he ran again, and he had been elected. And so imagine this, he got elected in November, and then he resigned in early February. So he'd basically taken office in January. He basically held office for 1 month and then resigned. And then in Oregon, the Secretary of State is the lieutenant governor. So by constitution becomes the governor.
Mm-hmm.
So you both fell into the position, right?
What was that?
You both fell into the position, yeah?
Yeah. So in one wild week, she went from having one job to having another job. And she and I, we left the Secretary of State's office sort of staff intact. And then Governor Kitzhaber's, he was a Democrat, so was she. So all their staff was there. And then I went with her, and she hired a few more people. And that was kind of how it all started. And it was definitely, so it's like completely deer in headlights. And I remember the DPU at that time that Joe did, just because it was such an intense time. There was just cameras and media everywhere and kind of trying to like, run from press and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So then, but anyway, yeah, it was a, I know, I think I just had my head down. I was also having babies. I had all my kids with her while working for her. So that was always
crazy
time. I was usually looking for a place to like pump, that was like first thing in mind, so.
So yeah, that's how she forgot me. The kids.
Well, Joe would just call me
he was
ma'am.
busy pumping.
That was the other thing. He would just say, "Hey," he'd open a door, "Ma'am." I was like, "Ma'am."
I was respectful, being respectful. Yep. Well, Gina, how did you get started? Like, I know, politics is not generally something, well, maybe it is something that people like as a 5-year-old are like, I want to get into politics. But how did you get to that point, being the chief of staff for the governor?
I came to it a different way. I think most people that are chiefs or that are in work in elected offices were really involved in, getting the vote out and, on campaigns and got to know their elected that way. And I didn't. I came up a really different path, kind of as Joe said. So I went to law school, and then I always thought, I think most people go to law school because they want to be lawyers. And that's the advice I would give. If you want to be a lawyer, go to law school. And I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I still went to law school. And I thought, I'll figure out how to use this. Like, I'll figure out how to do this in some way. But I didn't want to be in the courtroom. That wasn't interesting to me. So when I came out to Oregon, there was an opportunity to work in the legislature in a bipartisan office where you write all the bills and laws for all the elected members of the legislature. So sort of your bosses are is the entire legislature, right? So you get exposed to all the Democrats, all the Republicans, and you help them do what they're trying to do. You write the laws that they are trying to write, to support them and advise them. And so I did that for 7 years. And then Kate Brown was in the Senate at that time. So I sort of loosely got to know her because I was in her committee a lot. I did election issues, ethics, public records, all of that kind of thing. And so she was the chair of the Senate Rules Committee. So I was exposed to her there. And then I was getting a little restless after like 7 years in that office, thinking, I want to do something different. And she hired me as a legislative director, just because all my subject area had really nice alignment with the Secretary of State's office. And so I went and did that for a while. And then, as I said, like, I was just happy. I just was like there when
it all happened. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I was really like, I would say that I thought, the governor's office would be a cool place to work one day. I'd like to experience that. So it kind of all worked out, but not in any sort of road that I could have managed to make that way.
Yeah. Is that kind of you went through, you didn't start with the gov as chief of staff, correct? Like what'd you come in as like there, and how did it work? How did you work your way up to chief of staff? I know there's a lot of turnover with different government jobs and things like that, but how did it work for you?
I was her chief at the Secretary of State's office, but even though that's a statewide office, the governor's office is just a much bigger, it's a bigger field. And I had none of that political background, right? Like, I was like, I can read statutes to you all day long. So but that said, she and I always had a really, really good chemistry and good professional working relationship. So she did ask me to come, and I came in as a senior advisor. And what was sort of like kind of the moment is Kitzhaber resigned in an ethics scandal, right? Like, there was public records everywhere. Everyone was asking a lot of questions about how he handled that office and what was appropriate. And so my expertise in government ethics was really, and public records and all of those things was really, was like poignant at that moment in time. So I came in and I did that for a few years. And then, there was a lot of turnover. And she had gone through a couple chiefs, and I I think I was on maternity leave, and she brought me back to help. Literally, my job was to find a chief. And I kind of knew I'd love to do that one day. I also was like very clear that it was not the right time for me to do that. And so I got to interview some really, really cool people, and we ended up hiring Nick Blesser to be the chief of staff at that time. And he asked me to be his deputy chief. And so that is where I was. And then during COVID, he got tapped by the Biden transition team and so he kind of was really kind of in the office one day and then gone the next. And and that was a fun call. He called me, and he was like on a Friday and was like, this is all really secretive. I haven't told the governor yet. I need to tell her. And can we call her? And I was like, okay. So we get off the phone, and then I was like, oh shoot. Called him back, and I was like, I'm pregnant. That's my news. And so we called her together, and in that one phone call, she was like, and she doesn't usually use expletives, but she did. In that moment, getting both of those pieces of news, but
double whammy there.
Yeah, I wasn't the first chief to go on maternity leave in the country, but I probably was the second. So,
wow.
Well, and during that time, that was a crazy time. And that's what I was going to ask you about, is like COVID for us was crazy. The governor, from the security standpoint was, a political, she took one of the sides, and what comes with that is getting the other side, really pissed off. And so how did that work for you guys? It's already a crazy office just from my standpoint, looking in, but how did COVID change the dynamic of everything that you guys did? Like, I don't even know if you can explain it, but maybe try of just what that was like in that sort of environment, the political environment when COVID was like at its max.
I think it was really, really hard. It was really hard. It sort of took the joy out of a lot of the things you kind of do. And it felt like kind of quite literal survival, and also like how to manage a crisis that we didn't have, you were getting information in real time and making decisions with information that was changing all the time, and, you always just kind of had to do the best with what you had and what she had and what her gut feeling was and what the doctors were saying, and managing all that. And and then you overlay that with a really divisive period of politics, and it was just that was really unenjoyable. I remember when things were kind of getting back to normal, I was like, this was the job. I did enjoy this. Like,
it's reemerging.
Yeah. I would say what I'm grateful for is that in that time, and in the time that I became chief, like I felt like, I had a baby. You can only do what you can do. And I just felt like all the staff, we had been together enough where we already knew each other. We already like trusted each other. And so then when you had to go virtual, I think some of that base was there. And I'm really grateful that base was there.
Yeah.
I was really mad at Nick for leaving for a long time.
It was like the worst timing. Like, hey, be chief of staff and then handle this crisis.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. That's a tough time to jump into it. And you're pregnant? Like,
yeah.
What did you do? Did you have career work prior to getting into this? Or was this something that you kind of like went out of high school, college, and you kind of just got into this? Or what was life like prior to getting into the kind of the political side of things?
I guess I went, college and then law school. I was pretty young. Like I went straight out of college to law school and then moved out here. And I was at the judicial department for a year, and then I started in the legislature for that 7-year period. But even though it was around politics, it wasn't, I think I finally registered as a Democrat when Kate Brown was running. I was like, okay, I probably should do it, and so it wasn't something I saw. I was obviously not prepared or saw that coming, but it was, I guess I was around it in the legislature for those, 6-7 years that I was in in the Capitol building, even though I was doing more nonpartisan sort of legal work.
Mhm.
And then
Okay.
and then I went to the Secretary of State's office, and then I just felt like I got on a ride that just moved,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you weren't focused on politics from college, or from law school. You were just kind of got a job and moved your way up.
No, and I'm just like, I'm an unlikely, I don't like arguing. So people, I've been around a lot of lawyers that love arguing. Joe loves arguing.
I do, and she got some of that.
So,
and people that like arguing like talking to people that don't like arguing. And so Gina
Right,
and I,
yeah.
Gina and I
Making
had a
them real
great
uncomfortable.
relationship, if you can imagine how that went. Like someone like me trying to argue with her at anything. Because I would always, obviously I can say this now, but we would always just, me, I would pick sides. Like I would pick a topic that she was like going for, and I'd be like, maybe you shouldn't, and here's why.
Right.
So it always was a fun
Just
trip,
poke the
right,
bear.
Gina?
it's part of the information. So I mean,
We had a good time. But, well, like besides having like a great team around you to work with, like the Dignitary Protection Unit that you hung out with and relieved stress with, because we were obviously, Cody, we were always together, traveled together, went everywhere together, and had our times after the Gov was tucked away in bed. We had times to relax and stuff. But Gina, like how do you handle, like on a personal level, how did you handle all the stress? The chief of staff has to be probably the more stressful position within politics, in general, and probably with the Oregon politics as well. But do you have any ways that you handled like the stress of the job to make it livable?
I think part of it was knowing when I was ready for the job and when I wasn't, like not going for something that I knew I wanted. I'm an ambitious person. I'm always like, oh, I want to push myself and do that. But around the time I was hiring or looking to hire, like I wasn't trying to put myself in that position. And then when it was time, I just sort of felt this like it was just almost like a peaceful feeling of like, what's more stressful is trying to figure out how to work for someone else. I feel like I know how to do this now. I can do this. And it was more about building my team than finding someone to do it, and I think that was a big piece. So just being ready for and to Nick's credit, like I think I had been, what's that called? Like learning it under like apprentice, you know what I mean? Like I had been like, he brought me into things. I felt like he helped train me, honestly. And that was a gift he gave, and it really helped. And so that was great. And so I think I felt kind of prepared. And I think there's something that's crazy about having a baby that just tells you like, there's only so much you have to give. So you can do it. Like you can't like give more than you can give. And having a boss that knew me and trusted me, I'm in a new job now. And it's funny because in my old job, it's like Gina I'm not a super loud person, but when I spoke, everyone would listen. And now in my new job, I say something and 0 people listen. And I'm like, it's like
what happened here?
Do you know who I was? Like
yeah, right.
Everyone
have you seen my resume?
Well, it's a good point, Gina, because I think that a lot, and Cody probably sees the same thing, is you have ambitious people especially they have a goal, but they try to work too fast to it, if that makes sense. Like you seem to wait till you knew it was the right time, even though that was your ultimate goal. You knew when the right time was to pursue it and when the right time was to just sit back and watch. And I think you see a lot of people, especially in our line of work and also in my former line of work, that you see the promotion so much that you're blinded by the fact that you may not need it right now, or you may not be ready for it right now, which then can hurt you big time once you jump into it.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely people, like, and I feel like when you put people in roles they're not ready for, it's not good for them either. It's not good for the institution. It's not good for, and sometimes when you have to, like, as someone who actually had to fire people or move people on, or where it was in that kind of position, I did find that I did just sort of keep that as my north. Like, if this is not right for the institution, it's not right for them, they're not ready yet, or where can they be that is better? Because I really do think it takes a toll. Like, you can want to be ready for something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you might not be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, you're right. I think that the people run into a lot more issues when you see that goal and you're like, I can take it right now or I can wait, and they don't sit back and wait for it sometimes. So that's what we see. And it's good advice from you for people in the political field wanting to work their way up, is to just be patient, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because you don't know what's around the bend, right? Like you can't count on it, but at the same time, it's if you mean it, you'll work hard to be ready for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So politics, it's changing. It seems to ever be changing. People that are, what advice would you give to people that are like, that's their aspiration, is to be in it? Is that, I don't understand how people can have that aspiration. So I'm trying to like dig into how, what advice do you have, and what is politics now? Like, has it completely changed since you left, or do you see it as somewhat similar? Like and then what advice do you have for people that are like wanting to be the next Gina Z?
Well, I feel like I'm an aberration because I don't, I still like, I think some of my points of pride are the relationships I built regardless of, political affiliation. Like I have really good, strong relationships in both parties, and both parties have tried to hire me, and I think that's my happy place. Like I really actually get excited when good things are happening that people can come together around. Like, I know that sounds cheesy, but like it's that is, or you're playing the game together. At least you're like talking, like you're not just completely sabotaging each other, or this sort of like really hateful speech, really either way, right? Where you're kind of villainizing the other side. I find no value. That's not fun or exciting. I mean, I don't enjoy that. So I have to avoid a lot of the news right now, but so I don't know if my advice, because it seems like I feel a little bit stepped away from that. And actually what I have enjoyed, I work for a company right now that has things that both sort of all the political spectrums really like, like we have sort of a green, like mission. And so the Democrats love that. And then we work in ag. So and I find myself like, that is actually that's where I'm most comfortable. And I think a lot of people actually saw Governor Brown. I mean, she's a very liberal person, but if you know her, she actually has that core too. She really values the relationships, some of her best friends, right? Like, how everything plays out, like, she was very practical and she wanted to get things done and move them forward. And so I really aligned with her well on that issue. So I don't know. I mean, for young people getting into politics, I say, well, don't go to law school.
Yeah.
Skip that.
Yeah. No need.
Although I will say, if you have a brain that like, that's where I actually have a lot of fun, is when I can, outread someone and be like, well, actually, no, it says that, or this, it's like a fun, that's how I like maneuvering in the world is, sort of that way versus these really loud and outspoken political fights.
Yeah, for sure. So Cody, I'm going to move on to the next thing, or to her next gig. But you got any questions you want to ask? Like any?
Yeah, I was curious. Okay, so
that the average citizen wants to know.
Yes, because all right. So everybody that's had kids knows that kids can be a lot of work and it can change your perspective. I've known a lot of people that, had their first kid and their intention was to come back to work. And then, they go, oh, wow, I really actually want to be home with my baby, or this is harder than I thought to separate. Being in a position where you are, you might be into your job career time-wise so much more than another person that might just be like a standard kind of 9 to 5. How hard was that to transition into? And is it something that was kind of easy to do, or is it like, do I want, stick with the career, or I'm just curious, like when you have that complete change in family dynamic, how was that for you?
When I had the girls, it was, pre-COVID. So I felt like it set up more that way. Like when I decided to go back to work, I had to leave the house,
Yeah.
So I just remember that being really hard with the 4 month or 3 month, however old they are, when you kind of go back, and that you've got some really strong biology and instincts and love, of course, there to tie you to those. And so I do that was hard. There were some hard transition points for me. And then, and I did take a little bit more time with my second daughter off. And that said, even when I added the third, which is a total dynamic change, I must have something in me where I feel more myself when I'm working. Like that's a part of something that really brings me joy. It makes me who I am. And so, like, even with Hayes, I thought I had some postpartum, and I'm sure I did. And I was trying to fix that. And then I went back to work and I was fine.
Feel like I just needed to get out.
Just needed to get away. That's all it takes.
Weird.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, so I know it's like but as I get older too, I think I don't know, your values it all kind of meshes together. Like the other day, I thought I could 100%, not because I necessarily am like, oh, I want to be a stay-home mom. I have enough to do where I could be busy all day without a job.
Yeah.
And so then the fact that you're trying to do both, it's just sometimes you're like, this is insane. You know?
Yeah. Any,
how you do it. I don't know how you do that. I'm just taking care of the kids with my wife sick the last few days and trying to do work stuff. I'm like, I don't know how this is possible. Like, I'm just trying to keep them alive, let alone do a good job and be productive.
Yeah. What crazy story do you have, Gina? Like, think of one that that happened in the Gov's office. Do you have anything good?
And you guys are dads, so you guys are cool with I think the best story, but it has to do with pumping my express and DPU. So I think it's the right story for this crowd.
Yes.
So it was in the transition when Kitzhaber might or might not resign. He was kind of going back and forth, and he called Governor Brown or called then Secretary Brown. She was on the East Coast at some Secretary of State's thing, and he goes, "Can you fly back?" So she's flying back. She's in the air. There's only 3 people that know they're going to meet. Nobody knows, except the press thinks they might know. So I had to sneak out of the Capitol, and I'm driving to the airport, and a former chief of staff actually runs the airport. So he was helping figure out where to go. So he's like, park here, and a member of the Kitzhaber's DPU will meet you and get you through the airport to a secure location and to pick Kate Brown up. And I said, well, no, press don't know me. No one knows. And they were like, well, they know DPU. The press all know who's going to be around. So they were trying to follow. So anyway, is it Shelley? I think it was Shelley. Do you remember Shelley?
Yeah.
So she met me, and we are going, and I grabbed nothing but my breast pump. Going through the airport. It could have been a super, sexy scene.
I got priorities.
I
don't care about my phone, my wallet.
No,
I need my breast pump.
And we had to get her off the plane without press seeing her. So they put me in. So they brought me out on the tarmac. They had the one of your Tahoes waiting. And they put me in the Tahoe, and then the plane was going to come down, and we were going to take Kate off the plane and put her in the Tahoe and get her to meet Kitzhaber. So it was all very, again, I could have been in a movie, except that I'm sitting there, and this poor cop is sitting in the front of the car, with this random girl, and I'm like, excuse me, when's the plane gonna land? And do you think I have time to express my milk? And those were my words. And he was like, okay, 10 minutes. And so he jumps out, and he just stands outside the car while I pump on the tarmac, waiting for the boat to land.
This super secret meetup.
It was all cool, except I was like, how many random places can I pump my milk? So,
well, on that very similar note, Gina got very comfortable with that as she had the kids, and DPU basically by that point was like we could hear the pumping in the back and just were like focus straight ahead.
The other funny one
she's
was
more and more less shy, I guess. Like each time she's just like I gotta go. So
yeah, you just gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah,
The worst was when they weren't dads though, because they were like, "What?"
Yeah, they had no idea.
Yeah, right.
Is that a bomb? You know?
Yeah, they're like, "What is this noise?" Like, oh man, good times.
That's
well,
funny.
Gina, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and kind of how that it's a cool thing. And I'm not even going to try to explain what it is. I'll let you kind of show us what you're doing and kind of what this company's doing on the forefront of some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, so I knew after I'd been in public sector my whole career, I wanted to do private. And so I was looking, I think there were definitely some more standard options for me, but what ended up coming along was this very cool opportunity where there is a startup, it's a Swiss startup, and but it's trying to do something at scale. So unlike other startups where you start small and then just see what happens, and if it works out, you get bigger and bigger. This is like, no, we're gonna build a $1.5 billion plant to begin with. And the goal of the company is to revolutionize the way fertilizer is made. So it's getting sexier by the minute here. So right now, like, no people know about how polluting, air travel is, right? Fertilizer production and transportation is the same. It produces the same amount of emissions globally. And that's because it's made using fossil fuels and it's powered using fossil fuels. And then it's shipped around the world using fossil fuels. And then even the type that they make actually has carbon in it. So when the farmers put it on the ground, it's still emitting. So it's just a really big source of emissions. And so the founders of the company used to run some of the world's largest fertilizer plants globally, or companies globally, as CFO and CEO, and they started their own company to say, there's technology out there where you can do this without fossil fuels. And actually, it's 100-year-old technology. They didn't just like invent it. It just isn't. It's sort of the best. One of the best analogies is sort of like Tesla, where it wasn't that all the other car companies didn't know how to make an electric car. They knew how to make an electric car, but it didn't fit the business model to do that. It undermined all their entire, fleet as it was. And so when Tesla came in and said, this is the only thing we're going to do, that's actually what pushed the market now to change. And so it's a little bit like that, where we don't have any sort of secret knowledge, but we're building a business model that supports building fertilizer plants more locally, and using water instead of fossil fuels to, as your raw material. So, and committing to using renewable energy as well. And that's how you substantially reduce the carbon footprint. And the hope is that we build a lot of these plants, but also that the industry changes as well, because, so anyway, I could go on, but this is probably boring. But anyway, that's what I'm doing.
No, it's kind of cool. But like you said, though, it's like it's a process that kind of it's non-political in the sense, like, can you explain kind of a little bit to where it makes sense for both sides, the people that are concerned about the environment and the people that are concerned more about cost and getting whatever done they need to get done.
Yeah. Obviously I've kind of explained the sustainability mission. So that is exciting for a lot of people who are trying to look for ways to address climate change. I think that the other thing that happened during, right now fertilizer prices are dependent on gas and oil. So when you have something like a war in Ukraine, that the prices spiked. And in the Northwest, in the Pacific Northwest particularly, we actually import all our fertilizer from China, from Russia, from all these countries. And there's a huge feeling right now in this country that we want to be more independent. And so if you are, we can build locally, and also our prices are not dependent on gas and oil in that way. So they can be a lot more stable.
And farmers, like, how does this affect the farmers in a negative or positive way, like the ones that are ordering the fertilizer and using the fertilizer?
What's cool is that, well, they were some of our first investors. So they were on board to begin with. And that gave, I think, a lot of confidence, because that's who you need. If you don't have your customer, you don't have anybody.
Mhm.
So what we're doing is, I think you also hear green fertilizer, like, oh, are you making some fancy weird thing? No, we're making the exact same types of fertilizer. We're just like, basically fertilizer comes from hydrogen. And right now, the big ones are sourcing that hydrogen from hydrocarbons and releasing a carbon as they take the hydrogen. We're going to take the hydrogen from the water and release the oxygen. So you end up down the road, you're not making anything different. It's the same thing. So the farmers don't have to, they can buy this product right now. Right now, it just has a carbon footprint versus ours that won't. And also, and they like the idea of being local for sure. Like we're building out in Tri-Cities, Washington, which is, I don't know. It's like central Washington, where the Hanford nuclear site is, if that's familiar.
Okay. And is it a Northwest based company, or is this kind of like a nationwide, or what's the footprint so far?
Well, this would be the first built. So even though the company is looking like our second facility would most likely be in Brazil. So looking for these really, like, these import markets that really need this product. But right now, like, the Pacific Northwest is the flagship site. So
that's cool. And so it's going to be produced there, like whatever is produced.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to act like I know what I'm talking about. But
we're green, but we're building, we're building a huge chemical facility, right?
Yeah. That's crazy. Went from chief of staff to building a $1.7 billion.
I went from chief of staff to like reading science books and meeting with farmers and like going to a county fair. I'm out of my element in a lot of ways.
That's cool, though. That's cool to hear.
What a difference.
Well, Gina, we won't take up too much of your time. Your kids did not interfere with your interview, which is kind of disappointing. I kind of wanted to see the Rugrats jumping in there, but we missed them.
Yeah.
But I thank you for your time, Gina. Thanks for that. It's a cool story, and just it was good to talk to you and kind of show us, how you got to where you're at. And it's cool to see you doing new things and building new things.
Well, thanks for having me. You guys have an awesome podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm
very nice to meet you.
We're excited about it. I'm more excited to have you on it. So thank you for taking the time for it. Okay. Well, we'll talk to you guys later then. See you, Cody.
Yep. Okay. Gina. Sounds good.
Okay. Bye.